We're going to have some fun, and I've got some great ideas. And again, I'm glad you could join us. So, as many of you have followed my methods, you'll realize that I do things that aren't quite mainstream. Much of the methods out there in the sport that people, let me just see. Can everybody hear me? Put something in the chat if I'm coming off all right. I had a bit of trouble with my screen showing the video. But many of the people in the sport have been doing the same things that they were doing 50 years ago. So for me, I've always looked to change and advance in the sport. So I don't have a lot of time. I don't like burning a lot of gas. I don't like spending a lot of time, but I still want to be highly competitive. So if you follow my methods, you can be very, very competitive with a lot less work. And to me, that's the secret of the sport. And I think you'll enjoy that. I had a couple of questions before the live stream started. And one of them was, when you're selecting your breeders, are you looking for young bird fanciers? Are you looking for winners at old birds? What are you looking for? Now, me personally, I don't pay much attention to young bird results. Most of young birds, it's systems driven, if you can believe it. And the fanciers that are applying a good system, have healthy birds, are working them, putting in the time, usually can have results. And it's very, the results aren't true results because the pigeons aren't as good as the system. So for me, for young birds, I just race them on natural. And then I see what performs and what's highly competitive without a system. And then I can judge my birds much better in that way. Now, when I look to bring in breeders, I look for old bird results. Now, if I'm looking for sprint pigeons, of course, you're going to look for sprint results. But what I have found that long distance pigeons that can score at the distance over and over, are probably your best pigeons. The reason being is the longer the race, the less the handler it takes into the account. It's more pigeons. So you get a long distance race, no matter how you prep them, and you have to do your thing. You have them ready and have the right body weight and have the right energy and the training. But still, for the bird to be on the wing for 14 to 15 hours, it still comes down to the animal. So long distance is a little bit different, and you can really judge pigeons by the long distance. If you guys could I guess it helps my algorithm if you could like this, and we'll get to some questions here in the stream, and I hope my accent doesn't drive you too crazy. Hey, Kirby, good to see you. And how long before the season do I start feeding my celibate hens like you'll see in the video? Now, for me, I don't loft fly the pigeons at all before the old bird season. So I get their body weight down and I keep them hungry because I go right from the loft to training. So I'll take them, get them hungry, and only about 2 weeks before the first race, I'll start training. But they're nice and light and buoyant, so I cut the feed back. So I would say probably a month before the season, I'm feeding them light and keeping them hungry so their body weight is light. I let them go. They come home, they run in. Because if they don't run in, I'm going to have problems with the hawks. Now, for me, I'll only train them maybe 2 weeks before the first race and be super competitive week 1. Now, I know a lot of people loft fly them for 6 weeks and they train them for 2 months, and it's not needed. A lot of that is because you're just not feeding the birds correctly and possibly not selecting the right pigeons. Select nice, super feathered, light, buoyant pigeons, and it makes the game a lot easier. Good to see you, Mike. I know you've been antibiotic free, and I appreciate it. I know a lot of people follow my methods. I've been antibiotic free since 2013. I will not flock treat the pigeons. I will worm them. I vaccinate them for everything, but I won't flock treat with antibiotics before the breeding, during the racing, all that stuff. And my birds keep getting stronger. And this old bird season, I had some, a 2-year-old hen and then a 4 and a 5-year-old hen that were just blowing races wide open. And I think with the no medication for years, resting them adequately between races, they can do amazing things, but they keep getting stronger, if you can believe it. And I'm pretty excited about that. People used to focus more on a family of pigeons. Now people buy many lines, not creating a family, but cross for race and hope it works for them. Which method do you recommend for a new fancier? Well, when I was a kid, everybody wanted to take a group of pigeons and create their own family. So they would take the birds and they would do inbreeding and line breeding and try to create like their own group of birds, and they were all related. And it's not the way to go. Try to get really good pigeons from multiple lofts, cross them, race the children. If they're successful, breed from those children and keep going from there. Now, I look forward, and I know that in 2 years, I'm going to have some superstar pigeons and superstar breeders. I'm not looking backwards at pigeons from 10 years ago. I'm moving to the next generation, keep improving. So look forward, breed them, test them, and breed from the good ones. And if they're successful, then you can breed from them, and then try breeding from brothers and sisters and children of the successful ones. But I would suggest, breeding from children of the successful ones and the successful ones, because what Michael Jordan has in his genetics. We don't really know what Michael Jordan's brother has in his genetics. He might be good, but most likely, if at all possible, breed from the children and the champions themselves. Let's see. Get another question. You guys can put a bunch of questions in. Anything you want to talk about, we'll take care of that today. Let's say there are 200 same family of pigeons in one loft. Only one does good in school, one average speed, the other 199 at mediocre. Is it fair to say that family is dominating? I'm not exactly sure what you said. I mean, in a group of pigeons, there's always going to be some good ones, and you just concentrate on the good ones. Now, if someone wins a national ace, say they only have one good pigeon in the whole family of pigeons, and I'm not sure if that's the greatest thing. I tend to select pigeons from long lines of champions. You'll see the best pigeons usually they have uncles and aunts that are winning, grandparents, great-grandparents, and the family tree is just generations of winners, cousins of winners. And then when you see other people getting the birds, they're winning with them. And look at the birds and see that they're winning for many people, and that's the way to go. But one pigeon in a family, maybe it's a superstar. The genetics sometimes click. It's worth breeding from that pigeon and testing its children. And maybe it's one of those freak in nature. Thank you, Hugo, for the donation. I appreciate it. I put a lot of time into this, and it's a hobby, and I enjoy it. And YouTube has been fun for me, and I like giving back if at all possible. And I try to answer the questions, and it does take a lot of time, and I really appreciate it. How do you treat sour crop or slow crop? Now, when you see sour crop or slow crop, it's an intestinal problem in the pigeon. Something's going on in the intestines where the grain is not passing. Everything is slowed down, and that's where it's at. It's not really in the crop. The crop gets sour because the feed isn't moving. In some cases, you can kind of make the pigeon upchuck, get the fluid out. And I use avian solution oregano product, and you could give it like a syringe, mix it up and give a syringe of the oregano product. That sometimes will help settle the gut. I know in the past when I've seen that happen, I've mixed up some amoxicillin, just the powdered 10% amoxicillin, at about maybe 1/16 of a teaspoon, and in a syringe, and syringe the bird. And that usually will eliminate, if you might have to do it a couple of days in a row, but it usually will settle the gut and cause the intestines to get less inflamed, knock the bacteria down where the system starts running again. And again, I will individually treat the birds. I won't flock treat the birds. And I won't individually treat a bird over and over. I mean, hey, we've all been sick in our lifetime. Give the bird a chance. But if the bird is sick over and over in its lifetime, there's a problem. You don't need those genetics in the population. Salmonella is a real big problem in South Africa right now. How do you prevent it and treat it? Well, salmonella is in pigeons. It's in chickens. It's in birds in general. And I think the birds can build a resistance to it. Now, occasionally I'll get a bird with a lump in the wing. It doesn't bother me. Like, I haven't had a salmonella problem. whereas salmonella is, wiping out the pigeons. And I think a lot of it is because of the natural immunity in my birds and how much effort I put into making sure that I select from the strong ones. The weak ones take themselves out of the population. The strong ones continue to breed. The weak ones I either lose or, again, I can remove them so they get stronger. But I do vaccinate for salmonella. I don't treat for it. Like, I don't flock treat for it, but I vaccinate all the birds every year for salmonella, and I think it's beneficial. But again, they can build natural immunity to it, and it's in them. You're not going to wipe it out. People think, oh, I can treat them with Baytril for 10 days and it eliminates the salmonella from the system. I don't believe it. I just don't believe it. They carry it. It's in them. The birds with the best immune system usually can fight it. If you're not overcrowded, the loft is dry, and over time, if you vaccinate and give good care, the strong ones will survive and propagate. But I would recommend vaccinating for them, and vaccinate twice for it, and like maybe 3 weeks apart. Can young hens perform competitively in one loft race if it just laid an egg? No. If they're just laid, it's over. It's too close. Usually hens around 10 days after they lay, they're in their best form, 10, 12 days. And I've always would have been worried. I mean, anything's possible. I mean, I've had hens come home and fly all day and come home and lay an egg after flying like 14 hours, which is remarkable. Not winning, not like that, but they can be competitive possibly, but they're not going to beat a pigeon that's not at a disadvantage. And let's see. So no respiratory meds, no preventative meds for canker or anything like that. No. I decided that was it in 2013, and I'm going to see the strong, I hate to say the strong will survive, but the strong will survive, and the weaklings get sick. And I know the weaklings because I don't medicate, so I don't have to breed from the weaklings, and they're not going to win on my race team because I'm going to lose them. I'll take them off the team. So that genetics that you normally would be propagating, because if you're treating for respiratory before the season, every other week you're treating for respiratory, you're treating for canker. Well, pigeons that wouldn't have normally survived could actually excel. But I don't want those pigeons. I don't want those pigeons on my team. I don't want them. I don't want to breed from them, and I don't want their genetics. So no, I use natural products. And for the last 10 years, I like the yellow drops. I did a video on the yellow drops, and I can do that midweek. It's a good, it's an antimicrobial for both canker and respiratory in the head. I like the oregano products. I'll use apple cider vinegar after the race for 2 days. And again, it's supposed to knock down canker. But the other thing which will knock down canker and respiratory and cocci and all those other fun things is just a few days of rest. I mean, everyone doesn't rest their birds enough. So they're working them too much. The birds are breaking down. They're getting tired. And I tell this story, and I see it all the time. I'll have, say, a widower on my race team, and it might get hit by a hawk. And I'll have to give it a couple weeks off to regrow the feather. And well, within a week or so, that bird is acting like $1,000,000. It's cooing and strutting. It's on fire. What did it do? It just rested. It just hung around. So when a bird is stressed, canker, cocci, respiratory, it all goes up. It gets elevated. A few days of rest, everything drops. So my pigeons, and I did a video on it also, for every 2 hours on the wing, it's 1 day of rest. So if you can get that through your head, I had to quantify it. They fly 6 hours, they're off 3 days. They fly 2 hours, they're off 1 day. My birds fly 14 hours. They're off at least 7 days, sometimes 8 days. They don't leave the loft. But you have to feed like me. You can't rest like me if you don't feed like me. But that'll help you have pigeons race and win at 4 and 5 years old. If you rest them properly, the sickness is limited or less, and the career is extended. Let's see. How do you know if a bird is long distance or short? You really can't tell by looking at them. I mean, I handle some pigeons, and if they're big and bulky and muscular, and no way is that bird going to be in the air for 15 hours and fly a long distance. So more likely than not, the long distance pigeons they're kind of like, picture a canoe with long oars. So not a lot of body, not too deep, longer type pigeon, long wings, more long distance. The shorter distance pigeons may be stockier, bulkier, more muscle, maybe not as long in the wings. The wings aren't longer for the body. But again, until you test them, there's really no way to tell. And maybe if you use an analogy, if you look at go to the Olympics and look at the 100-meter dash men, and they look like bodybuilders. They're all muscle. They can run like the wind for 100 yards, 200 yards. And then you go and you look at the marathon guys and girls, they're slight, they're lean, they're not big, they're small, and they can run all day long. So if you're selecting long distance pigeons, select smaller type. If you sprint in middle, it's not as crucial. But long distance, make the game easier. Select smaller type birds for sure, and you'll have a lot more luck. Thanks, Philip. I'm glad you made the live stream. What do you give and how long you quarantine new birds? Now, I'm a little extreme. I bring new birds in. Now, I've been medication and antibiotic free since 2013. So I feel my birds have great, strong immune systems. So I bring a new bird in. I vaccinate it for PMV, usually PMV and Salmonella. I'll worm it and I'll spray it for parasites. And I toss it in with my breeders. And I've been doing that now for years. Now, the average person that their birds haven't been exposed and mixed, and I expose my birds to everything. They've been mixed. I've got birds from all over the world, and I would recommend, quarantine the bird a month, vaccinate it, spray it, worm it, keep it separated from your stock, and make sure it's nice and healthy. But again, I don't personally worry. I think that my birds are extremely strong, and on many occasions, I add the new bird to my breeders, and the new bird gets sick because it just doesn't have the immune system. It's weaker. It's coming from a loft that the bird lived on regular antibiotics, and it takes about a year for the birds to catch up to my pigeons. So the first year, I put no. I don't even care what the bird does. I'll let it breed babies, but I wouldn't put any emphasis on a new bird's babies at my loft. More often than not, they might be a little sickly. They might have respiratory. Some of them, you might get a bird with canker, but after that, once the immune system catches up, then it's fine. And the immune systems will catch up. Birds that have come from a medicated loft, you can get their immune systems to come up. Some birds are too far gone. The fancy is just live on meds and the whole family might be ruined. But for the most part, you can get their immune system to come up. I had a 20-day-old baby get sick with salmonella, I think. The parents have another baby. Will this baby die too? No. I mean, I've seen babies and the failure to thrive. I've had plenty of babies, even, the last year or so, and one's sickly, and some are just weak. And I wouldn't worry. Now, if the pair continuously raises sick babies, then there's a problem. I wouldn't worry about it. But if it has one baby, a sick baby in a round, the next round might be perfect, and they might all be perfect. So I don't freak. I don't worry so much with a sick one here and there. And but keep an eye on it because the pair might have an issue. And if you guys could like this live stream, that'd be great. And if you're not subscribed, subscribe because then you can ask questions. Does it matter if I'm buying one loft race chance for club races? Well, for me, one loft pigeons. Now, one loft pigeons don't have to break. Pigeons, they come out and they fly to the same spot. They're always flying to the same spot. And for me, I wouldn't concentrate on one loft pigeons for club and combine racing. I think you'd be better off going to people that race in club and combines and are competitive and have pigeons that break. Maybe a big front. I race in a front that can be up to 100 miles from north to south. We race from the west. So 50 miles deep and then north to south 100 miles. So those pigeons have to break or at least, lead and think. One loft pigeons, sometimes they don't have to break, but more often than not, the birds that win the one loft races are the ones that got messed up, the one that got lost. It went the wrong direction. It figured it out. It had to think. And a lot of times those pigeons that win the one loft races thought they learned something. And then when the race gets a little, when they hit adversity, when the final race is usually adversity, the ones that have already dealt with adversity tend to do well, because the pigeons that spent their whole life coming from point A to point B, point A to point B, and they just come home and they fly a direction, they go with the flock and they end up home. They hit adversity and that's the end of them. But the ones that have figured it out and had some challenges will usually do well in the final one loft race. But me personally, I'm not a fan of looking to buy one loft race pigeons for club racing, although it's pretty much all the same birds. People ask me, what's the difference? Well, all these superstar one loft race families we're here about, they all started racing in federations and combines and national races. So they didn't just originate racing one loft races. They all were winning someplace else before they went to the one loft races. So it's the same birds. I race the same birds in the one loft races as I do with my own birds. Hey, Murad, you're using my system in Morocco. That's great. My system of feeding has hit all over the world. I know people talk about, oh, the birds might get hot, or my climate is this and it won't work in this climate. Well, in my climate, in April, it's cold and rainy and damp, and that's when I start racing. May into June, it can be beautiful, 70s and 80s. And then well into June, we might have 90s, high humidity. So I race in the gamut of weather. And I feed the same the whole season, and the birds do terrific. So the system's working all over the world. And I say, if you master feeding, you master racing. I think back when I was a kid, say the first 20 years I was in the sport, I had a lot of success. But if I ever mastered the feeding like I mastered now, and I applied the amount of effort I used to put in back then, I could have been like off the planet. I still had an incredible amount of success, but I can do it now with like very little training, no loft flying, and correct feeding, and I can be at the top. And I think most of you should probably consider that, because why burn up the road? Why waste all that time if you can be super competitive without all the extra work? Let's see. Do you think it's a waste of time to keep a bird that doesn't breed winners but breed offspring that breed winners? Well, yeah, I mean, if you find a pigeon that its children are breeding, that's great. And many times what I found over the years, when I brought in these imports, and I used to bring in a lot of imports back through I started going to Belgium in the late 80s. So through the 90s, a lot of imports, and even up into the early 2000s. And it seemed like the imports themselves, they would breed okay, but their children always bred better than the actual imports. So in some cases, you might want to try the children. If you have a highly prized pigeon, you might want to breed from the children. But if it's good, it's good. But a lot of times people use the excuse, the pigeon itself is a stiff. It doesn't breed anything, but it's children breed winners. So that's a little scary for me too. What is your vaccination schedule for the young birds since birth to the race season? Well, that's pretty easy. Every pigeon I wean, at weaning, the last several years, I hit them with the PMV rota vaccine. The rotavirus and the PM vaccine, they get that at weaning, along with the pox vaccine. And I did a video that shows how to mix the pox a little at a time. It's good for about 3 weeks in the syringe once it's mixed. So I can wean babies for a while and not have to worry about making new vaccine all the time, mixing up new vaccine. So at weaning, I do the pox, I give them the pox, I give them the PMV and the rotavirus. Now, most of the consensus of the vets around the world is that rotavirus is the root of most of the young bird sicknesses. So do it. Get the rotavirus. It can be, it's available in pretty much every country. PMV and rotavirus at weaning. And then about 3 weeks later, I like to give them maybe the PMV salmonella bronchial vaccine. I give them a booster again for PMV, but I use a combination. It might be a PMV, adeno, circo, and I know everybody says adeno, but one of my doctor friends corrected me one day, and he says it's adenovirus. And I give them a combination 3 weeks later. Now, once they've had that, then they can go off to the one loft races. And I usually instruct the one loft race not to vaccinate my pigeons because they don't need to be hit again. At the minimum, PMV, the PMV rota with the pox at weaning, and then let them get vaccinated again at the one loft race if that's where you ship them. So the first year in their life, they'll get the two vaccinations before, within 3 weeks or so. And then before the old bird season, everything gets vaccinated with the PMV Salmonella bronchial vaccine, which I like. I'm not sure if the respiratory vaccine works, but I do like the PMV Salmonella bronchial before the old bird season, one vaccination. And I use that same vaccine on my breeders before the breeding season, and they'll be just fine. Now, a little side note with the pox vaccine. Now, I handled birds from a lot of different lofts this past fall for the convention. And I was poxing everything as they arrived and giving them the rotavirus with the PMV vaccine, the combination. And I had almost zero sickness. Now, I know the rotavirus is helpful, but I'm also thinking that the pox vaccine causes such an enormous immune response that I think that might have also helped with not having sickness, where many of my competitors, they also use the rotavirus vaccine, but some of them had a lot of sickness. So I'm thinking that it's possible that the pox vaccine stimulated their immune system. It's such a response to the pox that it may have helped with everything else. And again, if you challenge the immune system, like I like to vaccinate because it challenges the immune system. I like to mix my birds with other pigeons. I like to bring pigeons in from other places. I want to keep challenging the immune system, keep challenging it. Because if you keep them in isolation, if you've got your birds and you keep them in, they're not mixed and they're all one family and they never get to see other birds, and as soon as they mix, you're going to have issues. And the other thing is the guys that medicate the most, they're always having a problem. They're sanitizing, they're medicating to keep their birds healthy. When they go someplace else, they're the first ones to get sick. So you have to keep all of that in mind. Let's see. Someone put Michael Jordan has two brothers, 5'5" and 5'6". Figure that. Exactly. Now, I'm going to do a video on more videos on breeding, but something I've been thinking about, we'll touch upon here, is if you have an option to buy a brother of the champion or a youngster of the champion, buy the youngster of the champion. You know the genetics of the champion. You know he has the heart, the brains, the everything, the constitution, the immune system to be a champion. You don't know if his brother has that. Hopefully you'll pass it on to his child, and the odds of him passing on to his child are greater if the mother is also a champion, an unrelated champion. So if at all possible, buy from the champion, it made it to another champion, and unrelated is best, and we can always get into that more. What age do you vaccinate? I know you said in one of your videos. Well, I vaccinate the babies as I wean them, and I wean them young. So they may be 25 days old. I vaccinate them for PMV rota and the pox. I spray them for parasites, and I put them in the eye, dip their heads into the water, and I put them in the young bird section with all the little seeds, all the mixes, everything, the fat seeds. Don't stress them. Let them eat what they want. I hear all the time, and they were saying it when I was a kid 50 years ago, that force them to eat the peas and corn. The last thing you want to do when you wean your babies is to stress them. So if they want to pick and eat the little seeds and the safflower, great. Because I've been raising pigeons, over 50 years. I've never had an adult pigeon not eat peas and corn. It's only a few days, and then they're all eating the peas and the corn and all that. So don't stress them, but I do vaccinate at 25 days old, and it's worked for me, and I hope you do the same because I think it's better. I vaccinate. I did do a video showing how I hold them and how I vaccinate them. I do everything myself. I don't have any help. I vaccinate towards the head. I vaccinated thousands and thousands of birds. When I was exporting for the $1 million race, I would vaccinate 1,000 to 1,500 of them and never had an issue. So hopefully I'm not going to vaccinate one of my best birds and have it drop. So I just knocked some wood here. Let's see. What age do you vaccinate as a way to build or revamp combine racing? You know, it's tough. In America, I'm assuming you're from America, Redemption Loft. We're so spread out. And when One Loft Racing first started, I was like, oh, this is going to be the downfall. You know, this is going to ruin club and combine racing. But what I've found is it's fueling racing. Like, we have tons of people that are racing pigeons through One Loft Racing that wouldn't be racing otherwise. Either they don't have the time or they don't have a combine or a club. Or America is so spread out. There's only, 15, 20,000 of us over a big country. Whereas, you could have that many in Belgium, which is a little tiny country. So I do wish there's more for combine racing. I think what's going to help combine racing is when we can follow the birds live. Like, I know the tech kids, the young people like my son, maybe if he can watch the birds on the computer screen live during the race, there might be more interest. And I think that'll fuel One Loft Racing even more, where people will get into it just like the horse racing. No one owns their horse. It's at the track, but they're part of it. They're watching. And I think that'll fuel the sport too. So I'm hoping combine racing continues, and, I'll be 62 in March, and I'm still one of the younger guys, which is pretty sad. So I'm not sure. There's a lot of the newer flyers tend to be coming from other countries. I know Florida has a lot of Cuban flyers, and they're great. And, there's flyers from all over, but it seems like many of the newer fancies are coming from other countries, which is great. Hopefully we keep gaining. Let's see. How can you know if a bird is long distance or short one? I talked about it a little earlier in the video. You really can't tell by testing. And just go smaller type pigeons, buoyant, corky, longer wings, more apt to be a long distance type bird. I watched your video on minerals. What are the more important vitamins to supplement? Well, I buy the cheap Tractor Supply vitamins and electrolytes. Don't go crazy. You don't have to buy all these expensive things, and it's very concentrated. You don't need to use a lot. But vitamins aren't really that big of a deal. They can get most of what they need from the grain. From the grain. Minerals, when they're mineral deficient, that's where you're going to run into trouble. Like, you can feed your breeders just about anything and raise beautiful babies if you have plenty of minerals, and they're not going to be vitamin deficient. Now, I do keep like a feeder of chicken pellets in front of the breeders at all times, and they don't eat a lot of them, but they eat predominantly the grain mix, which they're on the Vercel Lager Champion right now. But I wouldn't stress too much. Vitamin D is probably the only issue if your birds don't get any sunlight. They got to lay out in the sun, and they don't get covered with feathers, so it's hard for them to metabolize vitamin D. So if I would think, vitamin D might be something that you could supplement with, and you might be able to find that in some of the oils that you could put on the grain. Why is creating good ventilation so easy, but also so difficult? If you can, will you be able to do a video on the subject? I actually did a video on my thoughts on ventilation. I think more is better than less. When I was a kid, and even recently, the drafts, everybody was freaking out. Oh, you can't have drafts. Well, how can you have air moving through a loft without having drafts? It's ridiculous. The stinking pigeons, the wild birds, are living under the bridge on an I-beam, and they look like $1 million. And we're worrying about, a breeze going through the loft. I don't worry about that anymore. If the wind is blowing through, my breeding lofts are open. They have usually, one of them has a big open flight pens on the back, and the birds go out in the snow, the rain. It doesn't matter. Hurricanes, storms, they're in the weather all the time. One of my breeding lofts doesn't have, aviaries on it like that. But I wouldn't worry. More is better. Now, with the racing birds, if you can have it from above, like my loft's a high peak, so there's a lot of air volume, and I don't keep a lot of birds in there. So if you can have the air moving above the birds and getting drawn out like a chimney, that's best. But again, it's better to have more air than less air. I keep a lot of my birds in flight pens. They're just a roof, two sides, and pole perches, graded floors through the winter and everything, and they do just fine. And I've heard of some people racing hens into a flight pen like that and doing super. So I wouldn't get crazy, but more is usually better than less. You don't want it dusty. You don't want it stuffy. You don't want to smell pigeons. You don't want to smell droppings. Excuse me. Ace Pigeons of proven lines is best chance of success. Keep the good info up, minimum of antibiotics. Thanks, Tim. And yeah, you know, a lot of people, you can't necessarily afford to buy from the Ace Pigeons, but maybe you can get, you know, try the relatives, try cousins, try, you know, grandchildren if you can, and then mix them up and then race the babies. And a lot of times the genetics just match. I did a video recently about inbreeding. All the great champions pack as many unrelated superstars in the pedigree as possible. They're not inbred pigeons. And if you can see the grandparents are all great pigeons, the odds of breeding all great unrelated pigeons, your odds of breeding a superstar is increased. And then, you know, when you get it, breed from that pigeon. Let's see. Do you think champions are born or raised? Well, there's more good pigeons than there are good pigeon fanciers. I think a lot of pigeon fanciers ruin some great pigeons. And they're born, you know, they're born. Now, what you do with them, like, I mean, if Michael Jordan never got to play basketball, then, you know, he never would have been a superstar. Or Tom Brady didn't have parents that were helping him and driving him to practice, and his father was in the yard playing catch. And, you know, you need to be the coach. You need to assist the bird in the process. You need to train it adequately. You need to educate it. You need to feed it properly. You need to have its body weight right. You need to be the coach. And then if it's genetically right, the bird can do amazing things. Now, you know, if you just put the bird on chicken pellets and didn't train it and just, you know, it had no education, it'll never be a champion, even though genetically it would have been with the proper care. Your system is working. I am only 2 minutes behind the first race. Can I use red cell in the food instead of the water the day before shipping? Also, can use Rooster Booster Avian Probiotics more than once? I wouldn't put the red cell on the feed. I think it's too concentrated. Just throw a teaspoon in the gallon of water and it's fine. I don't like to make things too concentrated. Now, you can do the Rooster Booster. I think you're talking about the B12. You can give that a few days in the week. It's just a water-soluble B12 vitamin I buy at a Tractor Supply. You could do it like, you know, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday. I never put anything in the water the day of shipping. And the same with the Avian Solution, the oregano product. If you want to use it a few days during the week, that's fine. Never on the day of shipping, though. And but it won't hurt. I got away this past old bird season. I was so busy. I was probably only training the birds 1 day a week with no loft flying, and I didn't do any yellow drops. I didn't mix anything on the grain. I didn't have time. The only thing they got was every week they would get 2 days of apple cider vinegar after the race, and then the rest of the time was grain, grits, and minerals, and they were amazing. But they've had over 10 years of antibiotic free. They've got strong immune systems. I think the average fancier should probably use the natural products that I suggest in the video, the yellow drops, the Avian Solution, the vinegar, because it takes a while to the birds to get to the point where mine, probably I don't have to anymore. And I didn't do it, and they did just incredible. Let's see. In my opinion, I'm 19 and newbie. There's lots and lots of airflow and probiotics, dechlorinated water for most of the birds, anything except vaccines, which are needed. Oh, hey, Kirsten, how are you? Yeah, you need the vaccines. You need good mineral products. Now, you can also use chicken pellets to supplement. They're loaded with minerals. And I keep in front of my breeders, if you can't afford all this mineral craziness, the very best mineral on the market is the natural. It's made by natural. It's the Vitamineral. It's the pink mineral. So if you can get grit, like a grit and redstone, a good quality grit, try not to use that ground granite stuff. And again, that's the worst. I did a video on that. I think it was one of my first videos, but it's It's very beneficial. Don't use that shop ground granite stuff. And that natural vitamin-mineral, it's the pink mineral, you're about there. You can supplement with some calcium, whether it's oyster shells, and maybe supplement with some chicken pellets for minerals, and you can get away without spending a fortune on minerals. And as for dechlorinating the water, I would suggest, if you're going to use any probiotics, to buy the aquarium chlorine remover. I buy the 2-drop to the gallon. Drop it in, stir the water, put your probiotics in, and then you can give it to the birds. Because why add probiotics to chlorinated water that it's going to kill the probiotic as soon as it hits there? Somebody's saying yellow drops rule. Yeah, that's a good product. I mean, all the Europeans, not all the Europeans, a lot of the Europeans, the Belgians, during the race season, all their fingernails are all yellow. And mine are the same way when I was using it. And, my wife's not a big fan when it stains like crazy. So, but there's not much you can do. Thoughts on calcium powder? I've never used it. Again, I think during the breeding season, anything, if you want to add calcium, it's not going to hurt. Calcium powder is just whatever. It might just be ground oyster shell or something, but good product. And we've got people in the stream from all over. And again, if you can I guess it helps my algorithms. I'm not exactly sure how this YouTube stuff works. And again, if you subscribe and tell your friends, I'm hoping to get up over 7,000 soon. I never thought. I started this channel in August of, I guess, 2022. So it's been like a year and a half. And I had a channel forever, but I never posted anything. And it's grown fast. It's grown very fast. Where can we find yellow drops? All the supply houses sell them. I buy the Herbots brand, but they're all pretty much the same. Siegel or Global if you're in the USA. I was in Blackpool, England a couple weeks ago, and they were selling it in the stands, and all the top places will sell it. It's Tom from England, newcomer to the sport. Give them grit from the beach and substitute the minerals with a variety of fresh vegetables every day. Now you can collect, if you got open ocean, you can collect the little stones and shells. You'll see it. I've seen the best grits ever on the beaches near me, and you can use that. And you could put it in the oven and bake it, and to kill anything you might think would be on it, and then let it cool and give it to the birds. And but they won't necessarily get all the minerals they need from that. I would supplement still. If you can only buy one mineral, use the Belgian vitamin-mineral from Natural. It's the best of all the vitamin-minerals on the market. What age do you wean youngsters? And once you wean them, do you leave the food for them at all time? We talked a little earlier. I wean about 25 days, I think. It's just when I have time, when I feel like I can. Some little... Just when I can sit down and vaccinate them as I wean them, and all the feed they want in front of them, all the small seeds, don't skimp. Let them eat what they want. Don't force them to eat corn or peas, and that's just an old wives' tale. I've never had an adult pigeon not eat corn and peas. You don't want to stress them. Let them eat what they want, and I wean them fairly young, and I vaccinate them PMV, rota, and pox when I wean them. When the birds are feeding babies, can you put anything in the water? Or avoid certain supplements, garlic, apple cider vinegar, oregano, just a few. Well, if they're used to it, I mean, I haven't put really anything in the water the last few years. I've just been using fresh water. I got to the point where I said, do my birds need the natural products to stay healthy? Like for a while there, you're thinking, do they need antibiotics? Then I was using the oreganos and the apple cider vinegar really regularly. And then I said, well, wait a minute. Why am I doing this? So then I stopped. Like for the last couple of years, 3 years, I haven't even used the natural products in the water for the breeders. So you can do it, but I would start. You don't want them not to drink the water. Do a light dose, like maybe half dose, to get them used to it, and then you can ramp up to the recommended dose. It's not going to hurt them. I went through maybe the first couple of years when I went to natural health, that I kept my breeders on the the oregano solution, the avian solution. I kept them on the whole breeding season. Every day I kept them on that. I was so nervous. I didn't treat the birds and the babies are going to get sick, but there wasn't an issue. And I keep my young birds on it most of the time too when I wean them. And I think it's a good product, especially if you're mixing other birds in with them. It's great to have them on that oregano product. How do I get my birds to fly longer around the loft? Just add more barley to the feed. Go 50% barley. Feed them once a day till they start leaving barley. Their body weight will be right, and they'll start flying like crazy. When I want my birds to fly, my young birds, I don't let my old birds out, but my young birds, I'll switch them to about 50% barley, 50% grain mix. Feed them once. When they start leaving a little barley, that's plenty. The next morning, you let them out. After 3 or 4, 5, 6 days, they'll start flying like crazy. Do you like any specific eye color? It's just a myth. It doesn't matter. I've seen champions in every possible eye color, from pearls to yellows to, bull eyes. I'm not a big fan of broken eyes. I think that where you see like the eye has color and half the eye, half is like a bull, like a dark eye. And I'm not a big fan of that. I haven't seen pigeons with broken eyes that usually have amounted to anything. But again, there's very few broken-eyed birds. So it could just be that. And but I don't. I like rich colored eyes. I like eyes. If you bring them out into the sun, a good way to test your pigeons, bring them out into the bright sun, put the pigeon in the sunbeam and watch that pupil get tiny. The gray ones will get a little tiny little pupil. Others you'll see the pupil will stay like that. I'll see photographs of pigeons on for sale and stuff, and they're under a light that's as bright as the sun, and the pupils are like that. Where others, it's hard to hit the camera, little tiny pupil. So, yeah, that's one way to look at it. But eye color means nothing, and I wouldn't worry. What do you think about giving almonds to pigeons? It's done in a lot of Pakistan. Yeah, great for fat. I think almonds would be excellent. It's not something that we do very easy. I guess you would chop them up because they're kind of big, but I'm sure a bird would eat a whole almond once they get used to it. But yeah, I'm sure it's a good feed, and I haven't tried it, but I can't see anything wrong with it. Again, another question of macadamia nuts. Again, I think macadamia, there's a ton of health benefits from macadamia nuts. They're just super expensive, so I don't think I would buy them for the pigeons. But again, if you chopped them up, yeah, I think for the fats, beneficial. And maybe use them, right before they're going for a long distance race, or a treat now and again. I have PMV and separate paroxyvirus vaccine, maybe Paramyxo. I didn't see any others in the supply. Do you have a seller to buy from? Many of the sellers, because they bring the vaccines in from Europe and they're not approved, they won't advertise them. So call them and say, I listened to Frank McLaughlin's live stream, and he said I had a call to get the vaccines because they can't advertise them. So you're missing out on the PMV rota, the herpes, PMV herpes, and all the different PMV salmonella bronchial, because you're just looking on the website and there's only like one approved PMV and salmonella vaccine in the US, and that's what they're advertising because they don't want to get in trouble. So you have to call. Do you use lactic acid? No, I haven't messed with lactic acid. I know it's produced in the muscle when, the birds are getting fatigued. And some guys, I use the vinegar if I'm going to acidify the gut and the crop and all that. And bacteria, the good bacteria like an acid environment. The bad bacteria don't like an acid environment. So I tend to, I like the apple cider vinegar, and I buy the stuff at the health food store with the mother in it. It kind of settles to the bottom, and it's just a bottle, maybe a quart. And I'll give it to the old bird team or the young bird team for 2 days after the race. Monday, and they fly on Saturday. Sunday and Monday, they get the apple cider vinegar at about 1.5 ounces to the gallon of water. And that's kind of like my canker treatment. And let's see. I am using 3 products containing iodine. Can there be too much iodine? Probably, yeah. Iodine is, you want to give it little trace amounts. The only product I use with iodine is the red cell. That's the horse vitamin. That's how my birds get their iodine. But I would definitely probably eliminate a couple or just use one at a time each week or something. But yeah, I wouldn't overdo it. And they don't need a lot of it, but they do need it. What are some ways to keep the gut microbiome healthy? The best possible way to keep the gut microbiome healthy is never medicate the pigeons. Now, my babies now, they're born and they go into they get the milk and the immunity from the parents, and then the parents pick at droppings and stuff, and a lot of that goes back into the babies and kind of infests the gut with this microbiome that's been for 10 years now not affected by antibiotics. So then they grow up and they have a true microbiome. They have what they're supposed to have. When you treat with antibiotics, it wipes out the microbiome, and then a new microbiome will grow that might not necessarily be the one that they should have. So the best way to have a great microbiome is to not treat the birds. Now, excuse me, a lot of people, you can't do it. You're going to have, groups of them that get sick, but try to wean off, try to, get away from the medication over time. So, but every time you medicate, you upset and you hurt the microbiome that's supposed to be in the bird's gut. And when they say microbiome, like the friendly gut bacteria, you upset it. You change the concentration of it. So I'm saying to myself, well, my pigeons have what they're supposed to have because it's been many years of not affecting that microbiome. So I'm hoping it's going to work, and I'm hoping over time my birds will just keep getting stronger and stronger. Where do you get your vaccines? VitaKing only had PMV and the KM1. I get all my vaccines. I have everything delivered from Global Pigeon Supply because they're local. It's about 4 hours from me, and I'll get all my feed and vaccines and minerals. And I love VitaKing. I order from them. I order from Siegel. I order from Jed's and so on. We're all friends. But if I could have everything delivered, it's a lot easier for me. But again, they all carry vaccines and you just have to ask for them. Yeah, I see some of us are, many of us are disabled, so training can be rough. Yeah, you can do it with feeding and good pigeons. And, if you had to, you could loft fly them. You wouldn't even have to train them. But I just don't because of the hawks. It's too stressful. And I feed my birds. They're on the edge of feed. They don't get enough. So they're not going to loft fly anyways because they're a little hungry. So it's better for me to just train them once or twice a week. Usually twice is the optimum, but they don't always get that. I have an 8x8 section. How many young birds do you think that comfortably fit? I mean, 8x8's not that big. I mean, you have a lot of perches and ventilation, maybe a little flight pen on it. 40 might be a lot. So I would probably not do more than that. And even that might be stretching it a bit. What is your opinion on growing distrust of one loft races? I don't know. I think there's good ones, and there's always going to be somebody that's greedy and try to beat the system. And I mean, the people I deal with in the one loft races in the U.S. I mean, I've been happy. I think they try to do the best they can, and they're ethical, and they've got so much to lose. I mean, who would want to lose their reputation? And I mean, over a one loft or over money. And it just, I know money can make people do crazy things, but I think most of them are good, and a lot of them have great reputations. It's always going to be somebody disgruntled and see something or hear something or rumors, but I think they've been really good, especially the people I deal with, and hopefully they'll strive to keep it in the up and up and not do anything that's questionable. The biggest problem is something will happen that'll cause people to question. And I'm sure it wasn't done intentionally, but somebody will start questioning, and then it'll roll from there. Can I use apple vinegar or salt for racing pigeon when I give them a bath? I wouldn't put apple cider vinegar in the bath water. You can definitely put in some salt. It's not going to hurt them. A handful of salt, and that's fine. Here in the UK, because of government restrictions on poultry, the number of fanciers, including myself, has switched to pigeon racing. Well, that's good to hear. Maybe we'll see that in the US too. We'll have a lot of fanciers switch over from chickens, and welcome to the sport. And it's the same. If you work, I tell people, if you bred fish or dogs or horses or whatever, canaries or chickens, you'll do really well with pigeons. You have stock sense. Stock sense is stock sense, and you can do very well. I use cod liver oil sometimes for A&D. Yeah, I think cod liver oil can be great for A&D. Just make sure it doesn't spoil. Keep it refrigerated, and because it will go bad on you. Do you keep an eye on the pH levels of the drinking water? I haven't, no. I know some people do, and probably not a bad idea, but no, it's not something I've messed with. And do you have a drawing for the free bird entering the people that were plagiarizing? Yeah, I'm going to do that soon. It's actually, we're into February, so we'll do a drawing on people that helped me find other YouTubers that were copying my content. I appreciate it. We'll do that within the week, and we'll do a drawing. Let's see. So that's good. You got the pink mineral, the dechlorinator. That's helpful. We have well water. Do we need to use an acidifier? Yeah, I would think the well water is probably like a pH of 7. It's probably neutral, so I would use the acidifier. And yeah, if anybody can hit the like button again, if you're new to the stream, it'll help. I don't know. I guess it helps send out my content, which I am having fun with it. Hi from Romania. Like your post. What do you think of PHA vaccine? It might be paramyxo, herpes, adeno. Great. I mix them up. I've used the PMV herpes vaccines, and I couldn't get the combination. I wanted PMV rotavirus when I just bought my vaccines, but I got straight rotavirus vaccine, and I think I got PMV herpes vaccine. So I might use them this year for the youngsters, but I'll make do. I've been told no peas for the race team. Is that true? No, that's just an old wives' tale. There's peas in my mix. Not too many during the week, but after the race, they can eat whatever they want. My birds eat the light mix, like the depurative, the mostly barley mix, 6 days a week, say, for short distance racing, and then they get whatever they want on the day of return. Hi, Tom from the UK. I'm interested in starting with racing pigeons. As a complete beginner, would you recommend jumping straight into the celibate system? If so, do cocks race well in the celibate system? That's a great question. I've raced widow cocks forever, since like the early 80s. And I never thought that anything could beat that system until I started racing the celibate hens. And it was pretty much because of my brother. He wanted to race some pigeons, and he was trying to figure a good system. I said, just keep them separate. He was new to it, and this was back around 2008. And just keep the sexes separate. Just do it. And all of a sudden, the lights went off, and the hens were just phenomenal. So celibate hens is your best system of all. Celibate cocks. Now, the cocks, the boys, don't do as well. Problem is, I think they have to go out to fly. I think they come into form by bouncing around, going out, going up and down. I think that really helps the boys. So you can race them celibate, but this year, I am going to try to let them out a couple mornings a week to see if the cocks results increases, gets better. But I'll know, fairly soon. For the most part, though, I'll have 7 hens and 2 boys in the hunt. 7 hens, and they just destroy. The celibate hens have been phenomenal. So if you're a new fancier, keep it simple. Race the celibate hens. That's what my brother's going to do. I'm going to be moving. And we're going to follow my son down to Florida when he goes to college. And my brother's going to continue to race, but he's just going to race celibate hens. Why go crazy? Just stick with the best. And it's so simple. How close to the loft do you put the air dancer? Well, for me, I put it right up against the building. I get my birds used to it. I'll lock the babies out front in the settling cage, and I'll let the thing fly for like an hour a few times before I let the birds out. So I'll put that air dancer. It can be almost hitting the roof, and my birds don't mind it. So I keep it close to the lofts because the hawks don't like it. Now, when the birds venture off and they're flying or their way, the hawks will attack or they'll come in from behind, but they don't like that thing. So I get my birds used to it and I put it right up against the building. How much loft exercise do you give them before training chucks, and how many chucks before the first race of old birds? Well, I give them no loft flying before I start training because of the hawks. So usually about 2 weeks before the first race, I'll start the birds and I'll go like a quarter mile, and I'll usually try to get the old birds out maybe 35, 40 miles before the first race, but I got them really nice and light and lean and buoyant so I can, over a 2 week period, I can get them to where I need them to be. And I can be very competitive. Now, 4 or 5 years ago, I started the Friday before shipping. I hadn't had the birds out, and it was, well, Friday before, a week before shipping. And I started the birds training, and I got them out about the following Thursday. I had them out about 18 miles, and I took like first, second, and fifth, and had birds at the top of the combine. And these were pigeons that just had almost no work at all, but I had them light and buoyant and corky, and the body weight was perfect. So they don't need a lot of work. Most of the time people overfeed, because they overfeed, they have to overtrain, and it's, you're killing yourself, and there's no need for all that work. So, and after the first race, my birds are all caught up. I don't train much before the season. I use the first week as like training, and then after that I'm with everybody else, and they've been burning the road up for months and months, so or weeks and weeks, I should say. What's your opinion on fish pellets? I've never used the fish pellets. I know I saw them in Taiwan. They were feeding the birds. I think it's a great supplement for high protein, and it's probably loaded with the omega-3s, which is the best oil out there. So I think it's good. I wouldn't overdo it. Even like a handful or something, or give them to the breeders daily, just a portion, but I think they could be great. I think the protein's great, and I think that the omega-3s in the fish is probably excellent. There's nothing better than the omega-3s. I use the flaxseed oil on the grain, and it helps the fatigue. It fights fatigue. It fights inflammation. It's great product. Now, most of the oils you buy from supply houses don't contain the flax oil, because usually it has to be kept refrigerated. So the best oil of all is not used. So just buy the flax oil. If you're going to put oil on the feed, buy the flax oil. There's nothing like it. Do you inject the vaccines in the neck muscle, between the skin and the muscle? I do behind the neck. I vaccinate behind the neck towards the head. I use a shorter needle. Maybe it's a 1/4 inch needle. I've never had an issue. And I've never tried vaccinating them in the leg, but it wouldn't matter if you're good at it. I mean, it's fine. If your pair doesn't lay fertilized eggs, can you use that pair to be pumpers, or would they not produce the best crop? No, use it as pumpers. That's fine. I've had pigeons that either really old pigeons that stopped laying when I used to use pumpers years ago, or, a hen that just doesn't lay. Great pumper. You can switch eggs to her anytime. Now, keep in mind that I'm not a big fan of pumpers, because a lot of times the champion is passing their immune system to the baby through the milk. So they're not getting the champion's milk. So food for thought. If you are sending birds out to one-loft races, say your first 2 rounds, then let the parents raise those babies. Let the actual breeders raise those babies. And then after that, foster eggs like crazy, because, they're for sale or whatever, or your own young bird team. It's not a big deal. But for the one-loft races, let the parents raise them, because you're more apt to pass that parental immunity to the baby. And if the parent's good, usually they have a good immune system. Can you give birds sitting on eggs or babies baths? Yeah, you can. I mean, it's not a big deal. It won't affect. I wouldn't put anything in the water. Like, I wouldn't add anything to the water. Just use lukewarm water. My birds are out in the rain, pouring rain during the breeding season, in the flight pen. They're soaked, and I don't usually give them baths, because they have the flight pens that are out laying in the rain. But I will occasionally. Let's see. Does the Vercon S also kill beneficial bacteria? Yeah, I mean, I think it could. I use it really weak. If the birds go off, I can use the Vercon S at like a half half teaspoon to the US gallon of water. Now, I think that at a week dose, it hasn't, for some reason with the Virkon S, they use it in like aquariums and like koi ponds and shrimp breeding. So whatever it is with that product, it doesn't seem to hurt the microbiome like some things would. So I think it's a good product, but if you needed it, it's better than reaching for the antibiotic. You know, one half teaspoon to the US gallon for 5 days might sort the birds out. And it's not something that I would do unless the birds are off. Let's see. Are you going to Senator Martinez Classic in 2024? Be flying one of the toughest courses. You know, I'll talk to my brother. He's the one loft guy. He enters. I breed him, and he helps me. He's my right hand man. I'm lucky to have him. But he's the gambler and the one loft guy. So maybe he'll decide to do it. Thank you, Frank. Great. Keep doing what you're doing. Sure, everyone really appreciates. I appreciate it. I'm having fun with it, and I enjoy all the nice words. And you know, I meet some nice people. I was traveling in Blackpool, and I was surprised at how many fanciers recognized me. It made me feel good that you know how nice people were, and it was a lot of fun. Do you think if you raced a team of pigeons on natural system, they could compete with your celibate hens over 300 miles? Not a chance. Not a chance. If I was racing pigeons on natural or hens on eggs or hens on babies, the celibate hens would destroy them. They would just destroy them. So I talked to a couple of Europeans, and they're like, you know, they're setting their birds up for the long distance races on babies and eggs and all that stuff. And I said, you know, if they were racing these birds celibate, they would do so much better. So no, of all the systems I've raced, celibate hen, number 1, widow cocks, number 2, the roundabout system, number 3, and natural system, number 4 on the list of systems that you know you can win with. Could you please tell us something about Bill the Book Richardson? I'm not sure what to tell you about Book. I've known him for a long time. I don't really know him. I mean, I used to, you know, export birds to South Africa for him, but very knowledgeable pigeon fancier. But you know, I don't know him. We're not buddies or anything like that. Thoughts with mold in wooden lofts? You know, mold is everywhere. Mold is in the environment everywhere. So if anything, you know, treat the lofts. Or I use a torch before the season. I'll go in there and it's like a flamethrower, and I'll just mainly to burn all the dust out of the wire and, you know, burn all the dust out of the nest boxes and all that sort of stuff. But I will definitely use the torch. But I don't worry about the mold. And you could probably, you know, spray the lofts with something that's antifungal if you were worried. But again, if in the environment, mold is everywhere. It's like, it's crazy everywhere. The Guardian Angel has landed. It's great to have you here, and we're having some fun. And I hope everybody will share my live streams to their friends and stuff. It's a lot of fun. What do you think on Kittle? Well, you know, people have been winning with them. I think they're good pigeons, and they're a good sprint pigeon. I talked to fanciers in the UK a couple of weeks ago that had them 10 years ago, and they had excellent results. And I haven't really messed with them. I have one cock that's bred from Kittle's mother's sister or something. Last year was the first year, and you know, but at the first year from quarantine, I don't put any basis in them. But maybe this year he'll do something. But I think they're good pigeons. But there's a lot of good pigeons. People get hung up in the hype. They get crazy with the promotions, and they chase, you know, these names, and it's just, there's no need. You know, there's so many good pigeons out there. I don't get excited over. I want to see how they do, but I don't get crazy over families. And the next thing is going to come along. I tell you, the next thing that's going to be will be the good grizz of Lederman. That'll be the next craze. It's going to be worldwide craze. The pigeons are going to be nuts. Everybody's going to want being a hen and being grizzle. And, you know, it'll come and it'll go. And then the next thing will come along. With the internet, and the world is really small, that it happens fast. Pigeons get hot and then they burn out just as fast. And when I was a kid, they would get hot in Belgium, say, and then they would get to the United Kingdom and they would get hot there, and then they would get to the US about 10 years later. Now it's like, 6 months and they've already taken over the world. So good pigeons, but everybody has them, and there's plenty of good pigeons. Like if you went to the guy that lives next door to, the owner of Kittle that's competing with him, his pigeons are probably just as good, but they haven't been promoted or advertised, or, they might be second national ace where, he's first national ace, but the neighbor works full time and has, 4 kids and no money. So yeah, I don't get crazy. I watch them and it's fun. But again, I want to sell pigeons like everybody else, but I don't chase families or anything, and no need. What ways do you select to choose a pigeon that would be a good racer or breeder? Well, the number one thing when I'm selecting a pigeon is I want it from a long line of champions. Make sure that the parents, grandparents, uncles, cousins have all been good, and you want to see other people winning with them. Because some guys are really great handlers. I have some great handlers in my combine, and there's some handlers in Belgium that they would win with street pigeons almost. So you want to see that these pigeons are winning for other lofts. And then buy as close to the champion as possible, and buy the buoyant, corky, super feathered pigeon. Don't buy the heavy bone, heavy show type, big heavy back, buy the corky, buoyant, very flexible, not weak, but flexible. When pigeons fly, they're flying for hours and hours and hours. Their body is doing this. They're not just pumping a wing and doing this. They're flexible. For they to stay in the air, they're doing this here for hours and hours. Super feather, cork. If you select super feather, cork, medium-sized pigeons, you're putting yourself way, way ahead of the game. The best pigeons to dominate the competition, one left races, the birds from the freak family. Well, that's really nice from Guardian Angel. I've had some good pigeons, and I've been lucky. I've had a lot of good pigeons over the years, and I've got a good selection, a good selector, but I'm always looking forward. I'm always looking for the next great pigeons. I stocked 3 hens off my race team this year, a 5-year-old, a 4-year-old, and a 2-year-old that I expect. We'll be talking about those pigeons 10 years from now. Do you feed depurative or barley to celibate hens? Well, I feed either. I mix my own. I'll use like maybe 70, 80% barley and add champion mix to it. Or I buy depurative, which is easier for me. And I like the Vercella Lager D-Pure. So I'll do either. Both are just as good. I know that the D-Pure doesn't have as much barley, but the thing is you don't want high protein and you don't want high fat in the feed. So the mix is kind of the same with the proteins and the fat. So a lot of the depurative are low protein, low fat, and people are realizing what it's like to feed correctly. If you feed light to heavy, your birds are going to go to the race heavy. So that was the old system. They come home from the race, you feed them, the barley mix, Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, then Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, you're loading them up. Well, you're going to send seals, big, heavy pigeons to the race. So if you're feeding light to heavy, you're going to send your birds heavy. So once you can master the feeding, and I put all my feeding series videos in a playlist, so everybody can just watch when I talk about the feeding. And if you master feeding, you'll master raising. Hey, Jeffrey from Puerto Rico, good to see you. Well, if everybody could like the video, that would be great. And I think we have 125 in right now. And I have a few more videos in my head that I haven't filmed yet. And, down below, if you could put some things into the comments, which always help me, and share my videos. And I do appreciate everybody joining. And this is Frank McLaughlin, McLaughlin Lofts. Like and subscribe. And we'll do this again soon. Thank you so much.